and was in a relationship that went very south very quickly during COVID. And, not to speak poorly of this family, but the scenario I was in was not safe, was not ideal.
You face battles most never fought, pain, struggle, adversity. But here, we use that as fuel. This is the Battle Harder podcast, where we motivate, educate, and inspire warriors of life, veterans, survivors, leaders. We share stories and strategies to turn pain into progress. Here's your host, Coach Rob. Let's lock in and battle harder.
What is up, everybody? It's your host, Coach Rob, here at the Battle Harder podcast, where I hope to motivate, educate, and inspire you to become the best version of yourselves. Today's guest, I look forward to this conversation. I always love having a female perspective from different things. You guys might think that Coach Rob, it's a manly podcast with nothing but grunting and being tough. And no, that's not true. I like to have women on my podcast and talk about their perspective. So we're going to get into an amazing podcast about how this young lady kind of hit rock bottom, where she went from there, and kind of how she's building back better now and living a very purposeful life. So I'd like to welcome to the show, Emily. Emily, thank you for joining me here on the Battle Harder podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
So before we get started into everything, just give my audience a little bit of who you are and what you currently do.
Yeah, so I'm a regional operationist for hospice. So I am an executive director over a couple areas in Arizona. I also am a speech language pathologist and an indie author focused on emotional intelligence and just building leaders and building teams to withstand hard challenges.
So with being in hospice, and I talked a little bit to you about this during the pre-interview, with being in hospice, like, how does that make you feel, like, emotionally and mentally? I mean, you're kind of surrounded by death, so to speak.
hmm It's exhausting. I mean, if I'm just transparent, I love what I do. I love being the calm in the storm for my team. But that kind of endurance that comes with hospice, it's never ending. There's always chaos. There's always a new disaster impending, unfortunately. And so it can get really tiresome, in the long haul. And so it's crucial to find people and build teams around you that can withstand the chaos. I always tell my teams, everything else is going to be chaotic. We have to be calm. And that's always been a great approach so far.
And with that being said, like, so what kind of led you down this path to have this unique career choice?
Yeah. So back, I went to school to be a speech language pathologist. I actually had a huge passion with working with veterans in rural areas. And before COVID hit, specialized in head and neck cancer. And when COVID hit, everything kind of fell apart. Lost my job just because of outpatients closing, right? And so ended up having, and we'll get into it, but some personal things happened in my life that forced me to choose a career that moved me across the country. And I went to be a therapist to not manage people. That wasn't something that interested me. I could see from afar that it was truly a chaotic experience, and I didn't want to do that, if I'm honest. And then leadership after leadership opportunity kept landing in my lap. And so kind of found out it was my calling the hard way. I started in rehab units and then made my way to hospice, and found myself from the Midwest in Arizona, and now we're in this position, and it's definitely had some high highs and some low lows, and brought me face to face with a lot of the challenges I faced in the past with a new lens, we'll say it that way. And so it's been a great experience in the sense that it's truly challenging and brought me to some low places, but has also really showed me what it feels like to win.
Yeah, and I mean, we know COVID has ruined a lot of things, unfortunately. I mean, I owned a strength and conditioning gym for 4 years, and kind of thought, like, where you thought speech and pathology might be your purpose, I thought owning a gym and having that business and had goals to scale and maybe make it a franchise and everything was my dream and my passion. And kind of like you said, the universe saw otherwise, and I guess was showing me more that the coaching was where I needed to be and what I needed to do, not necessarily to have the brick and mortar business. And it just kind of sucks how everything happened and went down with COVID. But with that being said, you kind of went through like a really tough time, and you had to change a lot of things in your life. sharing with what you want to share, kind of give us a breakthrough of kind of how that evolved and what happened and how that kind of led into why we're talking today.
Sure. It's interesting because we did have that pre-interview conversation, and you kind of challenged me in a way to revisit some memories I haven't for a long time. They challenged my core. I faced these things that really shaped who I was, and I kind of left them in the past intentionally just because of how painful they were. And the honestly, just sheer amount of fear I felt in those moments, I felt the only way to cope with them was to just disassociate and not revisit. And so it was interesting having that conversation with you and even sharing with you, like, I don't know how vulnerable I feel like I can be and revisit this place in my life. And I think a lot of people that have been through hard things, maybe you relate, that's not somewhere you want to go when you've been there. I think some people really enjoy talking about that part of their life, and that is not me. And it's interesting because I am a very talkative person. So you would assume that I would love to share this part of myself. And I don't, but I do feel like I should for this scenario just because I learned so much through it. So like I said, I was a therapist back in Indiana and was in a relationship that went very south very quickly during COVID. And, not to speak poorly of this family, but the scenario I was in was not safe, was not ideal. And me being the blind optimist that I was, just kept thinking, if I just power through, I'll be fine. I can, I can push through anything. It's going to be great. And COVID really brought this stark awareness that like I was isolated, and there was not really anywhere to go. And I was really by myself. In the Midwest, they closed down state borders. They weren't letting anybody go anywhere. And then my job was closing down. So it really brought me face to face with this relationship that I was in that made me feel very unsafe. And this person ended up going through a lot of mental health struggles that put my safety at risk and became super abusive. And so I put this person in an inpatient rehab for a while and kind of decided if I wanted to stay. At the time I was engaged to this person. So, and I'm sure they have their side. There's, two things can be true, but it was just really unhealthy for both of us. And COVID really exacerbated that. And I know a lot of people can relate to that, and I think I avoided talking about it just because I probably have a little hate in my heart, but not enough to really blast this person, because I know people do the best they can with what they have. But at the time, I just had nothing nice to say. So I figured say nothing at all. And so, at that point, I tried to continue my relationship after this person returned from the rehab. Felt so isolated because I couldn't go home. My parents, I wasn't transparent with what I was going through with anyone around me. It was pretty gruesome. And I was very open with this person's family. And I think something I've been called to speak about, I was raised very religious. And this scenario really brought me face to face with my understanding of religion, because faith was being used to manipulate me to stay.
Oh, wow.
Because faith in God, you should stay. Because good Christian wives do this, you should stay. If you break this engagement, what do people think? And I didn't realize I was being groomed and conditioned to do something I truly didn't want to do, because I was a 22-year-old kid, just out of grad school, had a whole life ahead of me. With speech therapy, there's a residency piece. And so I couldn't leave that job until I completed my 9 months. And so, I made the best of what I could. I redid the house, tried to make a home out of nothing, tried to connect with people as I did, and just really isolated myself because I was ashamed of what I was going through. And I took severe responsibility over something I shouldn't have. And I was embarrassed instead of transparent. And I think that whole experience just brought me to my knees, to be honest. Even talking about it gives me anxiety just because I don't really want to relive it. I don't have a desire to. I don't feel like there was any benefit to it in that moment. Now, what came after, so beneficial, but that moment in time, I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, And I think that with the unknown of COVID, it really just brought me to this place of, I was just devastated. I was devastated and in a lot of pain. And I had really previously relied on my faith. I was a kid that was raised, when I was 5, I used to tell people I wanted to be a missionary. I just was really into that story. And I loved my testimony, and I loved the challenges and the struggle, and I love the connection that faith can bring you. But in this situation, it was really used to hold me back from my greater purpose. And so at that time, not only did I lose a relationship and the home that I built and the career that I loved, but I also lost my faith. And I didn't know how to reapproach that without investing myself in the trauma. And maybe some of you listening to this can hear that. I remember being at church on Sundays, and mind you, at the time I led Bible groups, I led worship teams. Like I was so
Um,
invested, and I would be at the altar just sobbing, like, why me? Like, please give me a choice, give me an option. And the option was to leave. It's just not the option I wanted. I wanted it to work there. And it kind of started this whole writing journey for me that of just coming really, I feel like I'm a little speechless now. I just came so face to face with my worst fears, and everything hit me at once. And so left the relationship, moved into my apartment, tried to stay in Indiana at the time. I wanted to stay. My mom was begging me to come home, and I said, I know if I come home, I'm going to fall apart. Like, I'm not going to come back from this. And so I chose to stay, and choosing that space was the worst and best thing I ever did for myself.
mm,
After I left, this person continued to follow me and knew exactly who I was, where I lived, could track the people I was talking to, knew my car. And I had gotten a new car. I had gotten a new phone. Like, it was pretty intense, the amount of
wow.
information that this person had on me. And it shook me to my core because I realized how much I gave up. How much I gave up in this relationship and how much of myself I sacrificed for what, right? For what? And at the time, that's how I felt, just so angry. And it was the first relationship I ever left that I literally had no feelings. I was like, I'm done. I just want out. I want it out so bad. And so I would come home and my apartment door would be open. I'd get calls to my office and pretending to be a patient to see where I was. I mean, the list goes
Wow.
on. And this is kind of the first time talking about this in probably 5 years. And so I decided to take a travel contract to Montana. And my mom was horrified. My parents were like, my dad was pretty excited for me. But I just told them, I said, if I'm going to suffer through this, I want to do it in somewhere that's at least beautiful. Like, this is going to suck either way. So I might as well enjoy it while I can. And so I moved across the country to Montana. This person took all my money, took everything. So I was broke as a joke in Montana, got there, and my job wasn't ready yet because of my licensure. So I was in Montana in a creepy Airbnb by myself as a 22-year-old kid with I was 20
Wow.
point. No money, nothing. And really coming to just the end of myself, because I thought I had hit rock bottom after that relationship. Ha ha. No, I hit rock bottom in Yellowstone. And so I lost it. My parents, I think, were absolutely horrified because I was having this issue where I couldn't get out of my car. That was my safe space. That was the only place I could have emotion. That was the only place I felt safe. And so I was sleeping in my car. I don't think anybody knows that. I couldn't get out of my car. And I was just
Wow.
because I just felt like everything I knew